Wow, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, teachers. My name is Nefti Fortes, and I'm here today once more. And despite I live in Spain, and here it is quite late, almost midnight. However, I'm really glad to welcome you all to the 9th webinar session in English Teachers in Peru Community Live. It's a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity again to introduce our amazing guest speaker, our well-known Mr. Leo Mercado.
Excellent, very good. So today we're going to talk about the magic of speaking virtually. Now, speaking is something that we've always been focused on, getting our students to speak. It's not an easy thing. Some of our students, especially when they study for the first time, they're a little on the shy side, they're afraid to make mistakes. So it's always a challenge to get our students to speak their minds, speak to their fullest potential, and speak well. So today we're going to cover all the bases. We're going to focus on how to get our students to produce a lot of language and how to produce language that is consistent with the standards that we're trying to get them to achieve. Okay. So we have a lot of work to do today. We got a lot to cover. So let's look at the C method. And the C method is it's a term that I made up, and it refers to, I make up a lot of names, and I've been using them over the years. So the C method refers to the components method, which means that we want our students to put together or assemble a speaking turn that consists of multiple components. And if we make those components clear and simple, our students will be able to produce the language very easily. So what do I mean? Let's take a look at an example. So for example, if we want to start off with something simple, we can use the 1 + 1 + 1 rule. And what is that? For example, if we want our students to tell us about something, new vocabulary, right? Maybe we're teaching new vocabulary. And we want our students to tell us what the vocabulary means and to give us an example, and then finally give us something from their personal experience that relates to the word. So I think it's going to become clearer once we see the example. Now, in the chat box, why don't you guys tell me a little bit about the different kinds of places that we can see or visit in a city? What are the places that we can find in the city like Lima, Arequipa, Piura, Tumbes, Tacna, Hilo, and so many others that I've had the honor to visit over the years? If somebody visits your city, where should they go? What kinds of buildings are there? What kinds of places can they go to for different services, for different sightings? What can they visit? Give me some examples. Let's take a look at the chat box. But if we look, we do a little brainstorming and we identify different places. And here now, we see some picture representations of things that we can find or places that we can find in the city. So what do you think this is? Now there's a clue. You see the golden arches. So this is a type of place. It's a type of restaurant. It's not just any restaurant. It's a type of a restaurant. So what kind of a restaurant is? Now this is kind of this little guy. Well, actually not so little. This big guy can only be found in a certain place. Okay. What is this place? And where can we see other animals like him and many different ones? What about this place where we see airplanes taking off? So we want our students to identify the different places. And then what we want them to do is to tell us, what is the place? I mean, give us a definition of the place. So for example, we might say, well, what is this? And the students will say, well, it's a park. Well, please tell me, what is a park? So a park, and let me type this, you want the students to follow a certain format for the answer. A park is a place where, right? There we go in the chat box. A park is a place where people can find trees and flowers and ponds and even geese, right? Depending on the park, right? You have geese and ducks and that kind of thing, all right? It's a place where you can go to relax, okay? With nature all over the place. Now, that's number one. Now, what's the second one? What's the second piece of information you have to give me? For example, if you live in Lima, there is a park in Miraflores. It's called Kennedy Park, okay? Now you give me a personal experience. I went to Kennedy Park Friday night. I went to buy some souvenirs. So you see, you want the student to structure the response going from general to more specific to a personalized example in association with a vocabulary word. Okay? So you want the student to elaborate and to produce an extended turn, what we call a turn, a speaking turn, which means the student is producing language. Whatever the student produces when she or he is participating, that's a turn. We want them to produce as much as possible. If we give them a sort of template, a mental template, it will make it easier for them to speak up. For example, if we go to university is a place where people go to study for a career. In Arequipa, you have, you see, I know both of them, and I can't remember them right now. That's terrible. When you're giving a presentation, you can't remember the. In Arequipa, you have San Agustin University, and my brother, he studied there, right? So now the student is giving a personal example. My brother is studying there. He wants to be an engineer. There you go. So you have a general definition, an example in the student's hometown, and now a personalized piece of information that relates to what you're trying to teach. And you can do that with every single one. Now, you want to maximize participation, right? So you can either let the students choose, or you can assign the different places, or you can let them work together. If you have breakout rooms, you want them to work together. Definition, example, personalized information. Let them work together. Let them choose. Let them put them in breakout rooms. You give one group these three, you give another group these three, what have you. And this will help them. If they work with the mental template, they'll know that one sentence or a phrase, which is not a sentence, a phrase is a bunch of words together, they will not be sufficient. That will not be acceptable. Okay, that's very important. So this is how it's applied. And you want to, if you're working with a slide like we do here at NYC, and this is something that we use for our students in the regular English courses and also in our 5-star program for teachers. You'll see that we give them examples of the language. There are, it's called, it's in, it's very, it has. Kind of remind our students or the participants what kind of language they should be using when they're describing the place. And then some guiding questions, right? Where is it? What is it called? Do you have a personal experience? Okay, so this is supposed to help the students. Again, produce the language with a little help, a little scaffolding, which is the word that we use very often in education. We give them a gentle push in the right direction, okay? So you have images, you have prompts, and you have the mental template to help the students speak more. Let's take a look at something else. So for example, here, we see a mall. A mall is a place where people go to shop. It is usually very large and enclosed. Remember, a mall is not a shopping center. A shopping center, when we speak in English, the shopping center is open. Okay, it doesn't have a roof. It's not enclosed. It's open, right? A mall is very large and it has a roof. It's enclosed, right? So that has to be clarified. There is one in Jesus Maria for those of you who live in Lima, and those of you who are Peruvian. There might be some of you who aren't, but there is one in Jesus Maria called Aventura Plaza Salaberry. And I went there the other day with my family. We bought a new TV at, I think Paris doesn't exist anymore. We went to buy a new TV at Saga or whatever they have there. Yeah. And so you're personalizing it. You want the student to give you more. Now remember, the 1 + 1 + 1 rule is the minimum amount of language. You want them to produce more language if they can, right? So this is the minimum template. This is what you want them to do. They have to know this. This is the minimum amount of language that you expect. Now, if they can produce more language, little by little, they'll be trained over time if you apply this in different situations, different activities, different themes, and they'll be able to produce more language consistently, because automatically they'll know it's not one plus 0, it's 1 + 1 + 1. So I have to elaborate. I have to give a lot of information every time I participate. Okay, so the speaking triad. So this is something else that I'd like to introduce to you. I talk about this all the time because I invented it, so I like people to know it. And it's also very helpful. It's not because I just invented it and I'm trying to be famous, but it is helpful. when we divide the speaking for students in class, it's not just what students do when they're participating in a communicative activity, okay? That would be what we call what I call interactional language. So this is when the students are participating in a communicative activity from a textbook or from a learning platform, from the LMS. And the LMSs, sometimes they come with these activities when it's a blended course, right? When you have platform plus video conferences. And so that's the kind of stuff, the activities that simulate real life situations. But then you have classroom language. And classroom language is also an opportunity. Now, this is what we used to do, some of us used to do in the physical classroom. Okay, so classroom language is anytime students use English in the classroom. It used to be physical, now it's virtual as well, to a lesser extent, but you can still use it. And so this is when students, for example, want to ask you a question. Teacher, I don't understand the grammar, but please explain little more, please. Okay, so now the student is interacting with the instructor, right? Or the student in a physical classroom might say, or might work with the student next to her or him and say, what is your answer for number 2, Maria? Maria says, my answer to number 2 is A. What do you have? I have B. Why do you have A? So now hopefully we're not going to get into an argument, but we have different answers. So we're talking to each other. This you can do in a virtual classroom, right? Because in the virtual classroom, if you send the students into a breakout room, right? Then the students also have to interact and say, okay, what do we have to do? Jason, what do we have to do? What the teacher say? Well, we have to look at the problem and find solution. Okay, let's do it. Maria, let's come out over here. Let's talk. What do you think? And so now we're interacting, right? We're interacting in the breakout room. We have a task. It has to be resolved. And so we're using the language with each other. The last type of speaking that I want to mention is meta language. And this is when the students, for example, we want the students to explain how the grammar works, describe it, right? So for example, what is a participial adjective, or what's the difference between ed and ing? Remember that the participial adjectives, or the participle adjectives, sometimes they're called, they end in ing when you're referring mainly to something, and ed when you're referring to someone. So you want the students to explain this. So these 3 types, if we promote them in our virtual classes, like we used to do in our physical classes, then obviously we're creating more spaces for students to be able to use English. And that's what we want, right? Because we want to take the most advantage of the time that we have with our students. We want them to be able to use English as much as possible. They don't need to speak Spanish. Okay, Spanish they can speak pretty well, or wherever they're learning, right? If they're in Europe speaking Serbian, well, they don't need to practice their Serbian. They need to speak English. Okay, so that's the whole point behind this. Okay, so let's look at the first, the one that we have, CITs, classroom interaction techniques. We're going to look at one. We're going to watch one. Okay, we're going to watch one. And I'd like you, and this is from the Caprica courses that we promote at NYC. And what I'd like you to do mentally is I'd like you to watch, pay close attention. It's very short. It's a very short segment, but there's a lot in it. So I'd like you to identify the 4 steps that you think might make up this is called a comprehension check for instructions. Because remember, classroom interaction techniques, which is the classroom language that I talked about before, there are many different techniques that you can use. I only have time for one today because we have a lot to cover. So this is a comprehension check for instructions. There's also something called a comprehension check for content. There are also concept checks. Okay, so all of these things, today we're only focusing on classroom CITs in terms of the comprehension checks for instructions. I want you to watch the video, identify step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. What does the teacher do? What do the students do? And how does it end? Okay, and then we'll see what you come up. We'll go over the answers, the correct answers together.
Okay guys, let's continue. Now you're going to look at the pictures we have here. Okay, then you're going to listen to the conversation. And then you're going to match the pictures with the dates of the week. Okay? Gabriel, what do we have to do?
Okay, so first we'll look at the pictures, then we'll listen to the conversations, and finally we'll match the pictures with the days of the week.
Good, Gabriel.
So again, this depends on the age, this depends on the level, but as I said before, even basic 1 students as young as 9 years old, I've seen it, I've done it, can engage in comprehension checks for instructions. Of course, you have to train your students. This is not something that comes magically, right? This isn't something that comes magically out of nowhere. I mean, we have to train our students over time. Yeah. And so as they learn, they get accustomed to it and they feel more comfortable and they can produce more language. Okay. We want to train the mind to be able to produce. So here we say, teacher calls on student for instructions. Student calls on another student for instructions. Second student calls on third student for instructions. Okay. And teacher calls on class for instructions. So that's the step. Okay. And again, once you are accustomed to it, you can move on and the students know what to do. You don't have to explain things anymore. They do automatically. And if you notice, the teacher gestures. She doesn't say, she goes like this, you know, she says, and so that student asks the second student. Okay. Peruvianization. Okay. I think we're beginning to get to the final stretch. We're almost at the final stretch. We should be done in about 20 minutes. And so Peruvianization. Okay. Peruvianization is when we want to make it easier for the students to speak because the topic, the activity is something from their own culture. Okay, now I've talked about this in other countries. And of course, when I'm in Chile, I say Chilenization. When I went to Chile before the pandemic, of course, I'm not going anywhere now, except on virtual, but still, you know, it's the effect is greater when you're there at a conference. Mexicanization, Colombianization, Brazilianization. Well, Brazilian, I forgot how I termed it. And so, depending on the country, in this case, in Peru, it's Peruvianization because it makes it easier for people to associate the new language, the grammar, or the vocabulary with their own reality, right? With their own backgrounds. Okay, so it's always a mix. Okay, you want to combine course materials from a platform, LMS, or your digital textbook, and you want also to combine it with authentic material. So there are 3 components if you want to have a successful program. If you want to create activities that are really good, you want to have your core activities from your platform or from your textbook. You want to have Peruvianized activities, and you want to have authentic materials as well, so that you combine all of them. Yeah. So here, for example, who are they? I always use them because I love them both. Actually, I love one more than the other. I like her more, but I'm a little biased. I know. I'm not being objective. I'm being a little subjective. But yes, Gles, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, we love Peru. Okay. And so let's say, who are they? Now, the target grammar is as, we use this to compare, right? So we say subject plus to be, as plus adjective plus as. So if they are similar, you're going to use a positive form. If they are negative, if they're not similar, you're going to use a negative form, right? So for example, if we say good, the adjective is good. Okay, and we're talking about their singing. What is the sentence? So we say Lucia de la Cruz. And who's the other one? Who's the other singer? Good, Jocelyn. Look at that. Jocelyn is saying, Lucia is as good as Eva. So if you use the affirmative, then Lucia is equal to Eva. Now, Anelli gave another excellent example. Eva y yo is as famous as Lucila. Everybody agrees, right? Lucia is as beautiful as Eva. Okay, Karina. So now, if you think they're different, then you use a negative. Okay. All right. So Lucia is as old as Eva. Okay. Now, if they're different, then you have to use a negative. Can somebody give me an example of the negative with Lucia and Eva Young? Okay, everybody's giving affirmatives. We don't want to give negatives, right? Okay, is as intelligent as Eva. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next one. How about these guys? Look at these guys, and I'll give you 30 seconds. Look at these guys and tell me, you could use the affirmative or the negative. Affirmative. Okay, so Consuelo gave us a negative. Lucia isn't as good as Eva. I don't agree, but that's okay. No, again, I'm a fan of Lucia de la Cruz, so that's why. Anyway, now give me an example with these guys, okay? I'll give you 30 seconds. Give me an example with these guys. Affirmative or negative with these gentlemen. Well, I'm getting a workout today. All right, very good. Okay, so let's see. All right, do we have examples? Let's take a look. There we go. Guerrero is as effective as Farfán. That would be Edward Cumpa. Very good. Paolo Guerrero is as handsome as Claudio Pizarro. Helen Sea. Okay, good example. Now, those are affirmative, okay? Give me some more affirmative, or you can give me negative. You can also give me negatives. Okay. Nobody else? Okay. All right. So I guess we're done with the soccer players. And then we have Lima. We have, Lima, Cusco, and Iquitos. I've been to Iquitos many times. It's a beautiful city. I recommend that you go up there if you can. Go to Iquitos. It's a fantastic city. Okay. Okay. So if I give you the adjective cold, you give me a negative or affirmative. For example, Iquitos and Cusco, and the adjective is cold. What is the sentence? If the adjective is cold, what is the sentence? Iquitos and Cusco. Let's see, guys. No examples? Any examples, guys? Iquitos and Cusco, cold. Okay, so I guess we would have to say Iquitos is not as cold as Cusco, right? Or if we use the other way around, Cusco is not as hot as Iquitos. So we want the student, we help the students. It's easier for the student because if I said New York and Toronto, we could say New York is not as cold as Toronto, but they've never been to New York, maybe, so most of them, and most of them don't know Toronto. I mean, they haven't been to Toronto. They're not familiar with Canada. They don't know that Canada is freezing most of the time, yeah? But if they do know about their own country. And so it's easier for them to use the new grammar to speak and to describe. So you can say, give me a sentence. Cusco is not as cold as Iquitos. Cusco is not as hot as Iquitos. Okay? But Cusco is very cold because Cusco is very cold, especially in the winter. The temperature can drop to 0 degrees Celsius. So you want the students to give you more information, okay? Not just to give you the target grammar, you want them to elaborate. Again, 1 + 1 + 1. Give me a sentence with the grammar and give me 2 pieces of information. Now, if we do something a little different, like over here, this is one of our activities. I've shown this before if you've been to my talks. And you will see that we have some ingredients for ceviche. We also have seco. We also have ají de gallina. And I think we have one more. Lomo saltado. Okay. And so we want the students to participate. And here we go with the video.
Can also participate in a little bit. What do we have to do first? Let's see.
Okay, let me tell you that I don't know how to cook very well ceviche, but I am going to try to do that. Okay, first you need to cut into a pieces the fish.
Okay.
You have to squeeze. Then you have to squeeze the lemon. Some lemons, or the lime that as limes. Mr. Mercado told us that it is limes. So you have to squeeze limes in a bowl.
Okay.
And you add the fish, the pieces of fish.
Okay. All right, Katia. Let's have somebody else to help you too. Maybe since you say that you don't know how to do this very well, but it sounds good. You sound almost like a pro. But let's see if somebody else can help you too. Let's see. Who would like to help Katia? Nancy? Ada? Which one of you would like to help?
Yes, in my case, first
Ada or Nancy?
Nancy.
How would you help Katia? Yes.
In my case, first we have to wash the fish.
Okay.
And chop the fish into cubes.
Yeah.
Chop the fish into cubes.
Right.
And the next step is to place the piece in the container that you are going to use to serve the dish.
Okay.
And the following step is to mix the fish with the chopped yellow chili and coriander.
Okay. Coriander, yes.
Yes, and after that we should put the onion cuts into julienne's strips.
Okay, in julienne, yes, okay.
Nos despedimos todo el equipo administrativo el día de hoy. Podemos encender nuestras camaritas, por favor. Y cambiamos de repente la vista. Creo que es mi vista. Ya está, ahora sí. Y muchísimas gracias a todos los miembros de nuestra comunidad que nos han acompañado. No se preocupen, han quedado registrados todos sus correos, asistencias, se les va a compartir toda la información. Nos despedimos, Miss Ángela Salazar Barrera ha estado con ustedes hoy, Miss Miriam Córdoba Soto, Miss Zulita Chutden, Zulamita, Miss Kevin Laura, Miss Kevin me vas a matar, Mr. Kevin Laura de la Cruz. Mírame, ya está. Y por supuesto el excelente ponente que nos ha acompañado el día de hoy, Mr. Leonardo Mercado.
Muchas gracias por el
honor. También al teacher José Ortega Cerruto, administrador que siempre está detrás de toda la transmisión y que maneja todo ese tema del sorteo y el programa y siempre está apoyándonos. Todos nos despedimos, que tengan muy buenas noches. Bye bye, teachers.
Thank you. Bye.